So we're at the end of the undercard on the Tony Bellew versus David Hayes show, and I get the impression it's probably going to be half an hour before the big fight kicks off. So I thought I'd take the time to do some brief thoughts on the undercard tonight. It's been a slightly bizarre undercard, but an interesting undercard nevertheless. So let's start with Jamie Cox versus John Ryder. John Ryder knocks out Jamie Cox in round two. Um, Kind of an odd punch. Seemed to be like a sort of hook with his back to the ropes, caught Jamie Cox on the top of his head. Maybe it affected his equilibrium. There was a slight delayed reaction from Jamie Cox, and then he went down to the floor. Ian John Lewis started counting, was quite clearly and explicitly counting. Cox made an effort to get up at 9, but it was too late then. And in my opinion, Ian John Lewis was right to call the fight off. He said 9 very clearly. Cox was still on the ground. And as it got to the point where he'd say 10, Cox was still not back to his feet really. He was kind of in the middle of getting up. So I think Ian John Lewis was right to call the fight off. That's my take. Jamie Cox has become a bit of an odd character. Adam Smith tonight. I'll possibly give Adam Smith credit for the worst bit of commentary I've ever heard since I've started covering boxing. When he came out and he said that in his opinion, Jamie Cox was one of the most talented fighters we'd had in Britain in the last 10 years. I mean, what an outrageous statement. Jamie Cox, someone who has a lot of grit, has been involved in a lot of tough fights in the past, but most naturally talented in the last 10 years, absolutely not. If anything, John Ryder showed talent levels in there that was well and above and beyond what Jamie Cox had tonight. And I say Jamie Cox has a lot of grit, but that's the second time when Jamie Cox has been stopped, and people will question on both of those occasions whether he could have got up and could have offered a little bit more. It was kind of an odd shot to end on. Credit to John Ryder. He's very much experiencing something of a career renaissance. He was thrown into deep water early on. Obviously, took the loss to Billy Joe Saunders relatively early on in his career. And he's now having a good streak of form, stopping Patrick Nielsen last time out, now stopping Jamie Cox, obviously the win against Adam Etches as well. So credit to John Ryder, a likeable guy within the sport. And, who knows, maybe there is a world title shot out there for him. He was talking about Tyrone Zoiga, talking about Gilberto Ramirez. If I was if I was Eddie Hearn and John Ryder, I'd be looking for the Zoiga route rather than the Gilberto Ramirez route. But you never know. So credit to John Ryder. Bizarre performance from Jamie Cox. You're kind of left wondering what's left for Jamie Cox. Is he worth one other roll of the dice for Eddie Hearn? Maybe Jamie Cox versus Rocky Fielding. Rocky Fielding's a character who's kind of been left out in the cold in recent months. Perhaps you could match the two of them up against each other. I don't know. Joe Joyce versus Lenroy Thomas. I was looking at this fight and I thought Lenroy would make Joe look a bit awkward. He'd make Joe look a bit sloppy. But fundamentally, Lenroy's will would be broken and Joyce would win in short order. So I was kind of pleased with the way I call that fight. I actually bet on Joe Joyce to win the fight inside 3 rounds. And really, Joyce did look very ungainly. He did look a bit sloppy technically. But you can see that nickname, the Juggernaut, being a really relevant nickname for Joe Joyce. He came forward, huge physical presence, massive punch output, clearly a heavy-handed guy, throwing good shots to the body and to the head. Technically his shots didn't look the crispest, the sharpest, the fastest, the most well-constructed, but despite all of that, he still clearly generates a sort of heavy-handed power. You could see Lenroy was just massively uncomfortable in there. Lenroy's a boxer. If you give him time and space, he can construct nice punches, he can time punches, he can throw sharp combinations. But under that sort of pressure, under that sort of attack from Joe Joyce, his will broke. And I really think Joe Joyce will be a tough guy to beat. Looking at him, you suspect that he's going to be a durable guy. He's got the kind of approach to the game that makes you think he can take a shot. Now, it's kind of an odd thing to say that. We'll only know if he can really take a shot when we've seen someone land on his chin. But he looks durable. We know he's got a jab, even though he didn't use it tonight. We know he's got a good engine. We know he can go late in rounds, even though he didn't have to tonight. And I think Joe Joyce is going to develop into a heavyweight who's very, very tough to beat. That win tonight, the win over Lewison, the win over Lenroy. For me, that already puts him in that sort of top 35, top 40 bracket, and they're not messing around in terms of his matchmaking. So, yeah, Joyce is probably. He's not as smooth as a Fury, let's put it that way, but he's someone I'm going to be watching with great interest. And right now, I have him above the Nathan Gormans. I have him above the Daniel Dubois. I have him well above like the Nick Webbs of this world. I think he's one of the most intriguing prospects in British heavyweight boxing, and that scene definitely. Um, what else can I tell you guys? Uh, Martin J. Ward got stopped by Tennyson. I think I actually said on the podcast that I was having a look at Tennyson to stop Martin J. Ward. I think I was interrupted by Irish the Knowledge Tom, who told me it was a relatively easy points win for Martin Ward because Tom had seen Tennyson box a few times before. But as I said going into the fight, Tennyson, a naturally heavy-handed fighter. I've been to a few Ward fights, and I've always questioned whether he may be a little bit fragile around the jaw. Saw that in the Ronnie Clark fight, and I just thought Tennyson might have that next level of power. Fair play to Tennyson for riding the storm early on. Ward was all over him, dropped him, was sinking in very, very heavy body shots, seemed to be a class above from a boxing standpoint, and things looked like they were going to get very, very, very tough indeed in there for Tennyson. But he did weather that storm, and when it got to the fourth round, he started to turn it on, and you could see how uncomfortable Ward was when Tennyson was able to come forward and put him under pressure. Ward really didn't like it in there. For me, Ward kind of falls into a similar class of fighter as Liam Walsh, Bradley Skeet, that level of fighter, a British champion who looks very good, very classy boxer, skills, slickness, good long range game, but possibly doesn't have the power, possibly doesn't have the durability you need to succeed at that sort of upper Euro, lower world level. Tennyson for me, I don't think he's necessarily anything special. I think he, is too easy to outbox at the higher levels, but he's a tough guy, a strong guy, a heavy-handed guy, and that was the undoing for Martin Ward tonight. Kind of hard to see where Ward really goes from here. He can come back, but he's not the biggest ticket seller in the world. He's not the biggest personality in the world, and you wonder if that frailty will be something that will be possible to be ironed out. For me, sometimes when a fighter shows that frailty, that's there to stay. What else can I tell you? Paul Butler showed a lot of heart to go the distance with Rodriguez. Rodriguez looked very smart indeed, completely outclassed Butler. Really good timing, really good speed, elite level jab. Rodriguez really one to watch. He looked big and strong at that weight, bantamweight as well, especially if you consider how heavy at the weight Butler came in, 3.5 pounds over. Rodriguez to me looked even bigger than Butler in there. So he's someone I'm interested to see. He just won his first world title with ease, didn't really have to get out of first gear. And, I expect he's the kind of character who can go through the weights. Luke Campbell, I watched him earlier on the Sky Sports Boxing Facebook page. He put in a relatively smart performance. He looks on form. Campbell rematching even Mendy for a final eliminator for the WBC title next time out, apparently. That's a good test for Campbell. That's the kind of fight we want to see him in. I'll be up for that, certainly. Make Campbell a favourite in that fight, but we know what Mendy did to him before. And Campbell's another one, very, very good fighter. Probably is a world level fighter. But he's another one who, when he steps up to that sort of level, you remember his frailties. He's been dropped a few times, been hurt a few times, and someone as big and strong as Mendy, you wonder if he's that kind of character who can once again expose the frailties. Another chap I saw on the Sky Sports Boxing Facebook stream, Cody Davies. He only boxed around because he won by stoppage. He landed a devastating body shot. Looked like he broke the opponent's ribs. Nice shot that. Rare to see a prospect score a body shot knockout like that, especially from a straight long range punch. But yeah, Cody Davies, I like the look of him. I think he was only 3-0 going into the fight. Light on his feet, southpaw, good jab, good lead, cross. Seems to be a bit of smoothness, bit of flow to his work. Slightly inaccurate at times, slightly reaching for shots. He'll have to iron that out ever so slightly. But early stages of his career, obviously he's been picked up by David Haye, and he's someone I'd have a lot of interest in seeing again after that fight. So fair play to him. So yeah, all in all, impressed by Cody Davis, keen to see him again. Impressed by Luke Campbell, looking forward to him stepping back up into a meaningful fight. Impressed by Joe Joyce. Look, he's not the prettiest boxer in the world. He's not the slickest, fastest, most athletic boxer in the world. But by God, he's effective, and he's going to be a tough guy to beat. A real tough guy to beat. He's kind of, going to be a tough guy to beat in the Jarrell Miller mode, but doing things differently to Jarrell Miller. Impressed by John Ryder. Bizarre performance from Jamie Cox again, but impressed by John Ryder. And impressed by Tennyson. So an odd undercard, lots of stoppages, lots of fights ending a lot sooner than anticipated, but some good performances and some interesting performances. Let me know your thoughts. Give me your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed this, please hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe. Post-fight reaction will be up later, obviously, to the big one, Haye versus Bellew. So if you want to see that, do subscribe so you can check out the channel. Thanks for tuning in.